Matt Kaufman. I'm the chairman of the Kansas City Regional Transit Alliance. And up here with me right now is Eric Rogers, who's the executive director with BikeWalkKC.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming. We'll make this quick so we can stay on time and try to get everybody out of here by 8. Just quickly, I want to recognize any of board members or staff members of the KCRTA or BikeWalkKC. Please stand up and be recognized and for helping us put this together for you tonight. Thank you, guys. And thank you to all of the audience members and participants who have come here tonight. Just real quickly, BikeWalkKC and the Kansas City Regional Transit Alliance are both membership organizations. So if you're not already a member of one or both, you can do that out front, and we would love to have you guys become members of both of our organizations to support our work, to do things like this tonight, as well as continue to educate the community on our issues. We are both 501c3 nonprofit organizations, which means that we will not be making endorsements for or against either candidate. The information provided here tonight is for your information to educate you as a voter so that you are fully informed when you go to vote on June 23rd. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Matt from KCRTA, and we'll get started here pretty quickly.
Thank you, Eric. Certainly we could not do events like this to help educate the public without the assistance of our title sponsors. And tonight we want to thank Trans Systems for stepping up and sponsoring this event. Trans Systems is a nationwide engineering consulting firm comprised of nearly 900 professionals in 32 offices and is headquartered here in Kansas City, Missouri. They provide single-source solutions in the areas of planning, engineering, environmental, surveying, and construction management services for transportation projects for public and private sector clients. So thank you, Trans Systems. Also, we are very pleased to have with us tonight to moderate this forum Stephen Steigman with KCUR Public Radio. He is the Chief of Broadcast Operations, where he oversees the station's audio infrastructure and serves as senior producer of the public affairs talk show Up to Date with Steve Kraske. I'm sure most of us are aware of that program. Stephen has received awards from a number of journalism groups, including the Kansas City Press Club, the Kansas City Association of Black Journalists, and Public Radio News Directors Incorporated. When he's not engineering, producing, parenting, reading, studying, writing, or evangelizing about the public radio, he enjoys walks in Brookside, where he lives with his wife, Tamara, a professor at KU, and their 3 young children. So please join me in welcoming Stephen to the stage. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Well, good evening and welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening. Thank you to KCRTA, BikeWalkKC, and Trans Systems for putting together this event. And on behalf of KCUR Public Radio, thank you for inviting me to be part of this important conversation about the future of our city. KCUR is committed to covering issues like transportation and others as voters explore the options facing them on the June 23rd election and beyond. Allow me to take a moment to explain how this evening is going to work, and then instead of me talking about KCUR, we'll talk about the issue you're really here for, which is talking about the future of transit. We have a big crowd of candidates up here, which is fantastic. This also means that you're all going to get to answer the very same questions. We have about 4 questions, and I want this to be a conversation. You'll have a couple of minutes to introduce yourselves and your candidacy, and then we'll go into the first question, and we'll have some time to respond to the answers of other candidates as well. So let's get started. First, allow me to just read through a list of the candidates appearing this evening. Scott Wagner, he's the first at-district incumbent. Jay Hodges, second at-large. Quinton Lucas, third district at-large. Jamaica Kendricks, third district. Jermaine Reed, third, he's the incumbent. Catherine Shields, fourth at-large. John Fierro, fourth district. Dennis Anthony, fifth district at-large. Lee Barnes, fifth at-large. Alyssa Kennedy, fifth district. We also have Dick Davis, he's the first district incumbent. Teresa Lohr, second district at-large candidate. Jim Glover, 4th District at-large incumbent. And Terrence Nash, 6th District. Thank you all. A round of applause at the beginning for Oh, and Ken Bacchus, excuse me. Now you're on my list. Let's jump right into it. Let's actually start with a 2-minute introduction. We're going to actually time this. 2-minute introduction, give us your elevator speech. Let's start right over here.
Hello, my name is Jamaica Kendricks. I want to first apologize for being late and apologize for wearing flip-flops. I just got off of work and realized that my car key is missing, so I had to get a ride down here, and my shoes are in my car, so I apologize for that, but I'm here. So I decided to run for 3rd District in district because I believe that the people who are affected by decisions that are made by our government, by our schools, or anybody who has the ability to make decisions that affect our schools and our families, we should have a say in it. And with Kansas City Public Schools, I did a lot of work to engage parents so that we could have a say in our schools, and I know a lot of people know Kansas City Public Schools has been said to be failing for the last 40 years. Over the last 5 years, we've been able to consistently improve, and for the first time in 40 years, we've actually, since they've been accrediting schools, we've earned the points for provisional accreditation 2 years in a row. And I think that has a lot to do with the partnership that was developed between district administrators and parents, so that the district administrators were able to accurately identify the needs and then work with parents to create solutions. So after doing that, some of my parents were like, you need to run for office. I was like, no, that's not what I need to do. That would be an additional headache. And then I finally decided to, because I have a 15-year-old son and an 11-year-old daughter. I'm also married. And I want my children to believe that they don't have to accept whatever is given to them or their circumstances. It is possible for them to actually put in the work and dedicate themselves to something and make a difference and change it. And so running for 3rd District in district gives me the opportunity to focus on the people in the district to make sure that they get access to the resources and information they need to have a say in what's happening in their community. And it allows me to kind of bring my kids along for the ride so that they get to see that actually happening, not just in the school district, but here. So thank you. I look forward to speaking to you further.
Don't worry. Did everybody hear what Jamaica just said? Okay, good, because her mic wasn't on, but everybody heard it anyway. No. Good voice.
I just want to tell you I stole your key.
Thank you.
I'm just saying.
Can you give it back now?
Sorry. We actually have done so many of these now that it's more fun to play with each other sometimes. My name's Jay Hodges. I'm a 2nd District at-large candidate. I'm running for city council because this is actually time that we're going to start to make some choices in Kansas City. We have choices on these ballots between candidates and that are really going to be whether or not we choose to go forward as a city or whether or not we choose to go backwards as a city. In the last 4 years, we have accomplished a great number of things. We are now on lists that, quite honestly, 5 years ago, none of us in this room would have ever thought we would have been a part of. And all that momentum is leading us forward, but it is a very fragile thing, momentum. It is something that you have to keep going on. Working at a city or for a city or with a city or however you want to word it is more so about kind of the journey than it is about ever actually reaching a said destination. So I decided when I was in the mayor's office, I was a senior policy advisor. We were doing a lot of things. But I kind of started looking around and realizing that I could actually be my own voice, be the voice of the Northland that are colleagues like myself. My neighborhood in the Northland is actually going through a gigantic transition right now. We have people who have been there for 40 years. We have people who have been there for less than 5. We have families that are starting to transition and turn over into these new homes and start their lives there. And I started kind of looking around and realizing that their views were much more holistic than maybe what was traditionally being represented out of the Northland. It was much more about we and a lot less about me. And so I kind of listened to a couple of neighbors, did definitely talk to the mayor about it, talked to my wife about it, and just decided that I was going to give this a shot and start to move forward. And it really just boiled down to what I want my family to be raised in this city. I want my city to be progressive, and I want my city to move forward. And I want my city to be financially sound and financially safe because I'm a conservative guy and I work in finance and that's what I do. But that doesn't mean that we're afraid to take chances. That doesn't mean we're afraid to do things. So I'm getting the time. Thank you very much. My name's Jay Hodges. I look forward to speaking with you all tonight.
Thank you. I'm Dick Davis. I presently serve in the City Council, and I and probably completing a 4-year term where I think we had one of the best councils and mayor team we've had in years. We were able to get things done, an awful lot done. I represent the Northland, and one of the most impressive things we did in our 4 years was complete Shoto Trafficway, probably the most impressive expansion of the parkway and trail system in the Kansas City area. We're going to do a lot more in that area. My background is I was the first director of the Mid-America Regional Council. I was also the general manager of the Kansas City Area Transportation Authority for 23 years. And one of the things I'm particularly proud of is the ATA was not only a good bus system, but it also purchased the country club right away and developed the trolley trail that is now one of the great places to exercise in the Kansas City area. I think we've been a good team, and I look forward to another 4 years. Thank you.
You can applaud. My name is Jim Glover. I'm currently serving as your 4th District at Large City Council person. My journey began a long time ago when I was studying urban and regional development, and I was in Denver studying there, and I had a choice to make of where I interned. And I interned at the Regional Transportation District, and we worked on fixed rail for Denver as well as bus development, and we used both in a combination of highways to try and impact the future development plan of the area. We've come a long way, and I'm proud that we have a bus service going today, and that we're working on the Prospect Max as an extension. I've been involved in the improvement of the financing of the ATA, and I've also, my 3rd term, I worked on the metropolitan-wide bike and trail system. I need to say before I sit down, though, that when I came to Kansas City, I worked for the Mid-America Regional Council, being hired by Dick Davis right out of college, and we were working on transportation issues, and my job was to figure out the costs of alternative modes of transportation. I enjoyed that job, but went on to go to law school and then become very involved in neighborhood politics, and then eventually being elected to the city council. Thank you.
My name is Jermaine Reed. I am running for re-election to the City Council representing the urban core here in Kansas City, Missouri. My introduction is that I am an avid transportation supporter.
I didn't even get a chance to get any water. My name is John Fierro. I'm a candidate for City Council to represent the 4th District, the new 4th District, which includes neighborhoods such as Historic Northeast, Briarcliff, West Side, Plaza, etc. This is my first time running for City Council. I'm running because I care about people and I care about this city. I've been very fortunate enough for the last 27 years to serve my city as a volunteer on various boards and commissions. One in particular was to serve as the president of the Park Board, and during that time served on the steering committee of the Trails Committee that adopted the Trails Plan back, probably back in 2007, and have been a big advocate. In fact, I was sharing with some of the individuals in the audience that I'm a runner. So I run in the mornings, I use the streets, I use the sidewalks, and have a lot to say tonight. And also in terms of caring about people, I've spent my entire professional career working in the nonprofit sector, and for about the last 14 years have helped to leverage about $26 million working in the areas of Northeast and the West Side neighborhoods to bring much needed social services, youth development, after school programming, et cetera, to those areas. So I look forward to representing you on the council. I care about you, I care about the city. I think we have a lot to work towards. I feel I'll fit right in with the existing council, the city manager, and the mayor. I'm very collaborative, I'm open-minded, and know how to leverage resources. Thank you.
Good afternoon or evening. My name is Lee Barnes, and I'm running for the 5th District at Large City Council seat. I'm a native of Kansas City, and have worked in Kansas City my entire professional life. Had opportunities to go other places after graduating from college, but Kansas City has been home, is home, and will continue to be my home. As far as transportation issues are concerned, I remember being a youngster, having to ride the bus to my first job. And in that situation, I always said, you know, we need to make sure that those who cannot afford vehicles, other modes of transportation, need to have a mode of transportation to get them to and from work. And I think I will always be a supporter of that. My name is Lee Barnes, 5th District at Large. Thanks.
Hello, I'm Catherine Shields, and I am 4th District at Large candidate. And I'm very excited to be here tonight, and I'm excited that so many of you are here tonight. I am a native of Kansas City. I have my BA, my MA, and my law degree from UMKC. And I have served on the council before for 8 years and was Jackson County executive for 12 years. I then worked for a few years building affordable housing out of the west side, in both west side and northeast and central Kansas City. I'm very interested in being on the council again because I think there are some things that are going in the right direction, like transit, and I'm a very strong supporter of transit. When Ken Bacchus and I served on the council together, we were on the committee that developed the first light rail plan. Unfortunately, that did not end up being supported by the business community, and we did not have a successful vote. But there are other things that I think we need to change and improve, and I would be a strong voice for those issues. Thank you.
Good evening. Dennis Anthony, running for 5th District at Large. I want to thank you for inviting me. Also want to thank my wife, Tammy, who is home mowing the grass, so I could be here tonight. I'm an Eagle Scout. I graduated from Central Missouri in Warrensburg with a management degree. I'm a 28-year Navy veteran, retired as a Navy commander. Also retired city codes officer of 12 years. And so I'm pretty service-oriented. My most successful and passionate experience in my past has been just working for the public. I've got, although I'm retired twice, I'm interested in doing more. I've got passion and energy to do more, and I'm really looking forward to working on the council because we've got such a variety of big issues to pay attention to. We've got the airport. What do we do about that? Kemper Arena. Do we extend the streetcar? And all of these things. Transportation issues, of course. Bicycling, pedestrian. Of course, we want to expand those kind of things whenever it's feasible to do that. But there's a wide variety of things to do and a lot to accomplish over the next 4 years. I look forward to working on those things. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Quentin Lucas, and I'm running 3rd District at Large. For those who don't know, those of us running at large are going to be on all of your ballots, so make sure you remember us as best you can. I am a lawyer by training, like several folks here. I'm actually a law professor at the University of Kansas, and I'll note a few things that other folks have mentioned so far. First of which is I grew up in Kansas City and grew up with my mother, who's in the front row. She's always been in the front row, riding the bus, among other things. She was a single mom going to work, taking kids places and all that sort of stuff. So transit and getting around and walkability has always been something that's important to me and my family. And so I hope today we have a chance to talk about that. In addition, like several others, I had the opportunity after school to think about other cities to move to and ways to compare Kansas City, spending time in St. Louis, and New York, and Washington, and other places. And I think this is a fantastic community, but I'm stealing this from someone in the audience. We need to make sure that we're building a city for people and not for cars. And so I hope that we actually support bicycling, right, walkability, transit options in every other way. So I look forward to meeting you all. I'm Quentin Lucas, 3rd District at Large.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alicia Kennedy, and I'm a candidate for the 5th District. By profession, I'm a trial attorney at the Jackson County Prosecutor's Office. So for the past several years, I've been an advocate for victims of crime in our community. I'm running for City Council to be an advocate for the residents in our community. There has been a rumbling of concern about the disproportionate amount of resources that are coming back into the neighborhoods in the inner city. I've experienced it. I grew up in the inner city. lived in the 3rd as a child and been a homeowner in the 5th district as an adult. And when you look at the progression or the regression of what's happened over the last 20 years, it's important that we have credible leadership at the helm right now. And what does that mean? That means engaging young people, those such as you in this room, engaging a diverse group of people such as those in this room, and making sure that we look at practical resources to be able to address the needs in our community. When I look at my district, some of the largest zip codes, the average income is only $26,000 a year. You factor in what it will cost to have a car registered, title it, insurance, and put gas in it, and it almost breaks their budget. And so it's very important to make sure that we have practical modes of transportation. The Prospect bus line is one of the most frequent transportation modes in the inner city. It's important that we make sure that we have modes of transportation that accesses us to the region. I live in Midtown near the Swope Park area. I work at the Independence office. I have about a 30-minute commute every day. There's not a practical way for me to get from home to work in an efficient manner, let alone if I have children to drop off along the way. It's very important that we look at regional approaches to addressing transportation, making sure that we have engagement from all parties, and making sure that we use practical solutions and fiscal responsibility to address those needs. And so again, my name is Alicia Kennedy, and I'm a candidate for the 5th District. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ken Backus, and I'm running for the 5th District City Council seat. Unlike many of my fellow candidates here today, I did not grow up in Kansas City. I was recruited to Kansas City from Charleston, South Carolina in 1980 to be the City of Kansas City, Missouri's Housing and Economic Development Planner. I'm an urban planner by education and experience, and also a master's in public administration with an emphasis on urban from UMKC. I'm running for city council because before, when I ran at large, and I dealt with many issues throughout Kansas City and solved many of its problems, from economic poaching at the edges of our city, where we meet Liberty and where we meet Leawood. I sponsored to make certain that major developments occurred in both of those places where we wouldn't be leached upon from our tax base. And I advocated for and created the Fresh Creek Corridor work down at the shops on Blue Parkway and Swope Parkway Health Center. I'm running in the district because really the issues that affect Kansas Cityans in the 5th District really are in the district, and I want to use a multitude of experience based with the applicability of that experience and knowledge in making things happen. I want to bring that into the district, at the same time working on larger macro issues with the remaining members of the City Council. So I expect to spend a lot of time making sure that we not only get a maximum prospect, but develop prospects such there's a separation lane of different modes of transportation. I am a founding member of the Regional Transit Alliance, and I think I was the 2nd or 3rd chairman of the RTA. I'm pleased to be here to talk to you more specifically as questions are asked about how do we get there, how do we make it happen both for pedestrians, bikers, and for the public, otherwise, even if they're just walking around their community. Thank you for being here tonight.
Good evening. My name is Scott Wagner. I'm your 1st District at-large City Councilman, and it's such a pleasure to be with you tonight to talk about these issues. Instead of giving you this is what I did and this is where I come from and all of that, I'm going to tell you a couple quick stories to, I think, illustrate what I feel about this subject. About 50-plus years ago, the Northland, of which the 1st District is in, was annexed by the city of Kansas City, and many people thought at that time, why in the world would you do that? Well, 50 years later, I think part of that reason is being brought forth, the development that is there, the number of people who have moved there, and really how that is building out. At that time, though, everyone, or the city itself, was at a crossroads as to its future. We are at that crossroads again, especially when it comes to transit, not only in the Northland, but everywhere else in the city. And we have begun to answer that with a challenge related to the streetcar. But I'll tell you another quick story. Before coming on to the council, I was the president of the Indian Mound Neighborhood Association in Northeast, a neighborhood of 10,000 people in a general area of over 30,000. And you might recall that back last August, there was a vote for expanding that streetcar along Independence Avenue, and I threw a lot of weight to it. I talked a lot about it, and it failed miserably. The challenge that we have today is, what do we want transportation to be, and not just to move people, because whether it's bike, whether it's bus, whether it's walking, whether it's streetcars, light rails, or commuter rails. It's not just about moving people, it is developing back our city. And to me, that is the most important thing that we have to do in these next 4 years and beyond. How do we want the city to work, and how do we want it to look? 50 years ago, it was annexing the Northland. What's the next 50 years going to hold? I'm here to help support that. Thank you.
Good evening. Terrence Nash, 6th District. And the 6th District has a diverse area of Brookside and Waldo and Redbridge and Hick Mills and Ruskin. I've been involved with many community groups throughout the years, Southern Communities Coalition, Center Planning Development, and South Kansas City Alliance. And being involved with neighborhood groups, Southern Communities Coalition, especially with Lou Austin, the Three Trails CID, he is the champion of the trails and the transportation out in the Southland. So whenever I need to have any somebody to consult with, I always consult with Lou Austin. And being involved with the Friends of Redbridge, we were very instrumental in getting the trail from Holmes Road to Blue River put in when they put the new bridge in. Instead of going with just a highway bridge, we got a better bridge where we have a trail on it and the power lines, things buried, and a 2-lane bridge. So I'm very aware of the importance of the trail system, and being involved with neighborhood groups, there's always the issue of the sidewalks for all the neighborhoods out in the Southland. Many of the areas in Ruskin do not have sidewalks, so that's always a big issue. Well, on bus transportation, I support MAX bus lines. I believe that transportation should be mainly for getting people to work. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Teresa Lohr, and I wanted to thank you all for coming out tonight and thank the KCRTA for inviting us to speak tonight. I have lived in Kansas City, most of my adult life, probably close to 50 years now. I'm a mom and a grandma, and I feel like Kansas City, I wouldn't live anywhere else. I'm from the Northland. I'm running for 2nd District at large. I have been on the council before, 2 terms, one under Mayor Cleaver and one under Mayor Barnes, both very popular and progressive mayors, and we got a lot done on those two during those 2 terms. But look forward to doing that again with this mayor. As far as transportation issues go, nothing's more important than getting people to work, back and forth to work, and making that as easy and cost-effective as possible. We have a challenge up north simply because we're a suburban area, and we have lots of room. There are 314 square miles in Kansas City. So to connect all of those dots is a little hard to do. However, we have huge developments that are about to occur north of the river. We have 2 main sewer lines that are opening up, and there are going to be thousands of houses built. So we have one time to get it right with our roads, our boulevards, our bike trails, our walking trails. So this is the time that we need good, experienced leadership and to know how to do it and know what to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much for your introductory remarks. Let's jump into our first question. And just as a reminder, we have 4 questions to get through, and we have 15 candidates up here on the stage. So if we have some time, if by some miracle we have some time at the end of our 4 questions, we'll have a chance to hear from some of you if you have additional questions. So let me read our first question. Many of the city's adopted and in-progress plans emphasize improved conditions for biking and walking. What is your vision for a more pedestrian and bike-friendly Kansas City, and what would you do to make sure changes are implemented? Whoever would like to jump in first, feel free to do so. Please.
Well, first of all, I think that kind of comes back to planning. And one of the first things I would do is work with my colleagues to reestablish a planning department that has sufficient strength that it can actually look at all these issues and put plans in place and enforce plans. But I think the issue is on something like this is you really need an advocate on the council that's pushing for a walkable city and a bikeable city. And I would be that person. I think that's part of why I've been endorsed by the Sierra Club, because of my long-standing environmental history and support for those issues. You just have to make sure that in every plan and whenever you're doing any road or bridge, that you focus on it and make sure that it's not only moving cars, but it's moving people either with their feet or with bicycles, so that you have all modes of transportation available.
Going second here. Again, my name is Jermaine Reed, and to answer the question about vision for Kansas City as it relates to biking, I envision, again, I represent mainly the urban core in Kansas City, and a boulevard in Kansas City that you all are probably familiar with is Paseo Boulevard. I think it is an area of town that is probably one of the, it's very gorgeous, but it also has a lot of potential as it relates to biking, bike lanes, and so much more. So my vision is perhaps someday that there are wonderful bike lanes going all the way starting from Independence Avenue all the way out south to about 75th, 85th Street with bike lanes along that corridor. As it relates to the council, we've been able over the past 4 years to be able to put millions of dollars into new trails, in addition to the bike share that you see throughout the entire Kansas City area. I've continued to advocate on the council for the bike share, which in 18th and Vine, we've been able to put the bike carts there, allowing for people to not only get from downtown or in certain areas of the city, but to go all over and starting right in the 18th and Vine area. And so I think we've got to continue to do that throughout the city, continue to have champions and advocates for folks who are going to advocate for folks to get out of their car, to get on their bikes, to get out walking, and to become healthier citizens in our society. But I think along that trail on Paseo is a great idea. So I want to promote that.
My name is Jim Glover, and again, I'm a candidate for 4th District at large. I want to tell you what we've already done. First of all, in terms of planning, we have a person dedicated to bike lanes and making sure Kansas City is friendlier to establishment of bike lanes and bike transportation. We have painted lanes on streets for bikes, and we've pursued that policy already. And she is our planner. Her name is Deb Ridgway. The second thing I want to insert into the conversation, when you want to encourage pedestrian traffic, one of the things you have to do is not make it easy for people to park. When we were working on the Sprint arena, there was a big debate over whether we should build a massive parking garage right next to the arena, or whether we should use existing parking garages throughout downtown Kansas City and trust people to walk the Sprint. Some people said they won't walk. I was one who said, yes, they would. We need to encourage a pedestrian-friendly environment. Now, when you go to a Sprint show, you'll see people walking 4 blocks, maybe 5. That didn't happen before. And you have to, I see my time is, you have to make decisions like that to encourage pedestrian traffic. I made that decision. I was an advocate for it, and it's happening in downtown Kansas City.
Scott Wagner, 1st District at large. We've talked a little bit about what you have to spend. We've talked a little bit about planning, and I'll take a jump off of that. Part of what makes walking and biking work is you've got to have a place to go. You've got to have a destination. Having no destinations and expecting people to walk or bike is not going to happen because unless they want to bike or walk a marathon's worth of miles, they're not going to do it. part of what we have to do is decide what those destinations are. We have to identify those nodes that are out there that we can develop around that would have, as an example, mixed use, where you've got something on that bottom floor, you've got people living above it. In order to make these sorts of connections work, you've got to have destinations. So let's figure out what those destinations are. Let's figure out then how to connect them, and then your pedestrians and your bicyclists are going to make it. One final little note on that. I know one of the challenges that we have with Bike Walk and with the bikes that we have set out there is there's just not enough people riding them. Again, making those destinations work helps improve all of that.
I represent the 1st District, the area on the eastern side of the Northland. And I would say that our district is probably the one that is the most difficult to get around by anything other than an automobile. Much of it was developed after World War II, and it was developed with open ditches, no curbs, no sidewalks. One of my greatest concerns when I managed the ATA was our inability to generate ridership in that general area, and that's because somebody would walk to a bus stop one day, and the first rainy day they'd find a different way to get around. So sidewalks has been a major concern of ours as we push and try to improve the Northland and the transit system. We look for ways to make sure that bus stops are walkable. We've tried to find ways to make sure that the area is a place where kids can get around on a bicycle, and it's really deficient now. I live right near Penguin Park, and we're about to build a new entranceway that's a mile-long strip with a 10-foot bikeway on one side of the street and a sidewalk on the other. That's the way we should develop the city. We have talked about the possibility of a bond program. If we do, it's a chance to make sure that as we expand our system of roadways north, that we do it right, that every one of them have a bikeway and a path that we can utilize, that we develop parkways that have wide open spaces, and we make it a city that you can get around by something other than the automobile. Thank you.
Let's go to Jamaica next, and then Ken will get to you right after that. Thanks.
Hi, Jamaica Kendricks, 3rd District and District. So my perspective is a little different. First and foremost, I would be representing residents of the 3rd District. And so for me, I just want to give a little picture of them. So right now in this district, over the last 4 years, we've gone from about less than 8,000 vacant properties to over 11,500, and that's in 4 years. We have poverty rate of 36% in this district. Our median income is $26,000, where the city's is $57,000. And so the priorities in this district are going to be a little different. And when we're looking at the Bike Walk KC program, I think it's excellent. I love doing bike trails. But the question is, like Scott said, where are we going in the 3rd District? We don't have small businesses. We don't have grocery stores that are closed in a lot of the areas. And a lot of our students attend schools that are charter schools, which are not in walking or biking distance from their homes. So where are these families going? And so I think what's important is that we start to look at why people aren't doing this and addressing those problems, as we're also addressing the problems of biking lanes and bike share KC and all those different things. And so I think our investment needs to be in entrepreneurship as well as education and building partnerships rather than programs. When we build partnerships with the school district, with the unions, with businesses and those kinds of things, and we invest in the entrepreneurship of the people living in that district, then we create businesses and schools and churches and things that people actually can bike and walk to, and we increase the access to that, and then they'll actually start to use it. So I think we need to work on everything at once, but I think we need to talk to the people living in the area to figure out where their priorities are, and then figure out how to match what we're concerned about with that to actually address their needs.
As Jamaica's indicated, it's important to put everything into context. My name is Ken Backus, and I'm running for the 5th District, and we have every kind of issue, every kind of problem in Kansas City also exists in the 5th District. As we walk around and look and talk to people in the 5th District, there are people who have major culvert, ditches, open drainage places, and the like. And so the last thing they're concerned about perhaps may be a bike lane or walking trails or something like that. But it's important to maintain the connectivity throughout Kansas City. You heard earlier 314 and 315 square miles. As the past chairman of the Regional Transit Alliance, we dealt with connecting throughout our region. Connectivity many different options for public transportation. Well, it's also the same in our neighborhoods. And we have there are over 5,000 vacant houses east of Troost Avenue, tens of 20,000 vacant lots. So insane number of issues. Poverty rates from 33% to 49%, depending on which zip code you live in. So the issues are great. And so, but at the same time, we live in one Kansas City. So the importance of connectivity in different parts of the community, using different ways. But I'll tell you what scared the crap out of me is driving by people and watching them drive in text at the same time and being on a bike. Now, I'm just telling you, that scared the crap out of me because I think we ought to figure out what these connectivity places are and give prioritization to connecting Kansas City regionally, not only in Kansas City, but to our neighbors in the immediate suburban areas as well, and then place separated lanes where we can and or some devices so that if someone is texting and drive off, they hit something else before they hit a bicyclist or hit someone who are walking. So I think it's important for education, both for the motorists who drive in a four-wheel vehicle to a person who's walking to a person who's also on a bicycle. Thanks.
I'm John Fierro, candidate for 4th District. For me, my vision is to support connecting people and creating a healthier Kansas City. I think when I rode a bike for a summer ago, it allowed me an opportunity to get to know the likes of Columbus Park, different parts of historic Northeast, Midtown, et cetera. Certainly I can get in my car, but it's a lot different view when you're riding along, you have to stop. For me, I think it starts with investing in sidewalk improvements. We encourage people to walk, and when you go through some of these older neighborhoods like in the Northeast and even in the West Side, sidewalks are broken, they're inclined. How do you expect anybody to walk without falling and injuring themselves? And then when you look in our parks, we have a lot of existing walking paths that need to be repaved, and we need to fix the water fountains. We want people out there riding bikes, running, walking. They need to be able to drink water. They need to be able to go to the restroom. Also, I like what's going on in terms of the internal partnership between Public Works and the Park Department to pave more bike trails. We need to continue to invest dollars in that, which I support. Also, I think there's an opportunity to connect a lot of the existing trails. And I really believe if we mirror some of the things going on like in Denver, we need to have a trails coordinator, and not to take anything away from the existing staff. I think they've done a good job, but I think in addition to them, we need to have a dedicated trails coordinator to really connect the dots, to find ways working with the private sector to raise money to support these type of initiatives.
I think we have about time for one or two more responses.
Terrence Nash, 6th District. I want to expand on the sidewalk issue. According to the city charter, I'm an accountant, the city charter says that the property owner is responsible for the curbs and the sidewalks. So that's a real detriment for the sidewalks getting fixed, because, especially out in neighborhoods, because usually they're only on one side of the street. So one side of the neighborhood, group of neighbors wants the sidewalks and they don't have them in front of them. I have sidewalks in front of my house, and the trees, the big oak trees that are 60 years old, are bringing up the sidewalks. So I would have to pay for those. While my neighbor across the street, he doesn't have to pay for the sidewalks. So maybe we need to review our sidewalk plan in the city charter. In other words, go from the area plans. We have Hickman Mills area plans, Red Ridge and Waldo, and make a district like a CID, make it a sidewalk district or a sidewalk curb district where we pay in a certain amount on property tax, and they have a plan, 5 and 10-year plan for sidewalks and curbs to get replaced in that area. So you'd have a dedicated funding source for it. Thank you.
Jay Hodges, 2nd District at large. I just wanted to, everybody had great points, and I'll be very, very brief. Who here actually just bikes in downtown, midtown for whatever reason at all? Go to work, go to the grocery store. Yeah, when I lived in Fort Collins, I worked at New Belgium, and I biked to work on the bike trails or on the streets pretty much every single day. But I also biked to Target and the grocery store and a friend's house to have a beer, and like what I mean, like we have my point is this: we have to change our mentality. Councilman Wagner is exactly correct that we need to start actually trying to figure out destinations. But inside the city as a government and inside the elected officials, we have to start changing our mentality about what we actually do on bikes. It's not only about biking to work. That is a piece of it, that is a component of it, but it's also just biking because it's an easier way to get around sometimes. You don't have to, fight for parking or do whatever else. When we lived in Fort Collins, we biked all the time, everywhere, just as a mode of transportation, which is a shocking thing to a lot of electeds. But this is being done everywhere, and we need to work on changing our mentality so that when we're doing developments and when we're actually moving in there, we're not thinking just simply about, well, this person works at B and therefore lives at A and we need a straight line here, but actually starts to think more about the fact that this living area may be better suited if we actually had rideable bike trails on the lanes or, actually on the sidewalks or streets or wherever. But it's a change in mentality of approach as opposed to we need simply more of them.
Let's get one last response from Alicia.
Sorry, was it? No, we'll both go.
All right, I'll be
We'll
quick.
have plenty of time to address some of these same issues in our next questions.
Okay, I would just like to respond with that with an experience I had. So the last time I had a vacation, I traveled to Miami and we had a layover. Actually, we had the layover in Atlanta and it was rained out and
You need a bike to get between terminals in Atlanta.
Pretty much, but I'll tell you about what that experience was, which would have been very difficult. We had a rain delay for my connecting flight in Atlanta to Miami. Well, because of their transportation, we were able to get at the airport, take the MARTA, get on the MARTA, go all the way out to Buckhead, have dinner, found a place to go for the night to go enjoy ourselves, and came back to the airport by the time the next connecting coming back to catch our flight, the red eye, out that morning. Now, obviously, we didn't sleep, but we're able to, as a result of that inconvenience, go experience Atlanta, spend our money in venues, enjoy ourselves, and get on to our next destination. That's the importance of having connectivity. Where if that was to happen in Kansas City, you would not have the same experience. And so I think when we look at modalities and connectivity, and from a regional perspective, that's a perfect example of how that comes into play. And I know we're a long ways off from that, but I think that will be an ideal thing for us to be able to connect people from. And Buckhead's quite a distance from the Atlanta airport, but we didn't even get wet. I mean, literally, you just hop right there and go on out to the city and enjoy yourself. So what that does is it creates more exposure to the city. It allows people to spend more of their tax dollars, their dollars in your city, sales tax base, and also encourages people to support the local businesses as well. So I think that feeds into a lot of the issues that's come up today.
Okay, so before we get into a big debate about the future of the airport, which is a whole nother forum, let's move into our second question. Thank you all very much for your responses on our first one. The current council recently adopted a road diet resolution that evaluated all of the city's multi-lane streets to pilot lane reductions. This is a proven method by which cities can significantly increase safety for all road users and make room for bike lanes or on-street parking at minimal cost above routine street resurfacing. What else would you do to make sure public space is shared equitably? Who wants to hop in? Please.
Teresa Lohr, 2nd District at Large. First of all, I think we need a very good educational and PR curve here. I live in the suburbs. I would love to ride a bike to shopping centers or wherever, but you would get killed in the Northland on a bike. We even have bike lanes that nobody pays any attention to. I mean, they just drive over them. You can't even see them where they were designated anymore because there's never been a bike on them as far as I know. So we have to educate the public. We have to make a conscious decision within our city that we're going to be inclusive in our connectivity. We do have a wonderful trail system started, and we do have pieces of it in the Northland. But because it is so big, the Northland makes up 51% of the landmass in Kansas City. So it's like a huge, giant piece of land up there that we need more people in. We've got about 29% of the population up there. So I think along with the road diet, We need to encourage education and encourage public relations on how we're going to incorporate both pedestrian and bicycle traffic.
Me, hopefully. My name is Jim Glover. Along the lines of educating the public, one of the things we've done the last number of years, and this term that is new, is that we've allowed various streets downtown to be closed off completely, and people to imagine what the street could be like if we had more walkable environment there. And people came and put up storefronts and other things in the street to show people what it could be like if we weren't so street dependent and automobile dependent. And as far as the road diet, I worked on that policy, and I'm glad to tell you I voted for it.
Is the road diet policy working, and what's its future? Should we? Go ahead. Now's your chance. Jump up.
Well, I was on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee that recommended the road diet, but unfortunately, the number of miles that we can implement is very low. We've got to find, it's a great idea, and we've got miles and miles of streets that are 4 lanes wide and really don't need that type of capability. So the name of the game is, how does it become a higher priority? How do we do more than talk about it and get more implemented? And I think that'll be a challenge of the next council, and I think you'll see a lot more of it.
A few things, and I've had the chance to listen for a few minutes. We're talking about priorities. We're talking about educating the public. First, on educating the public, I think as important as educating the public with road diet programs and others, we have to educate construction companies and developers. So I have the good fortune of running on 13th Street a lot of mornings through downtown and all of that. Many of us deal with different issues such as blocked sidewalks, blocked lanes, and other types of issues as we're going through downtown, midtown, and others, right? We need to have a better policing function to make sure, particularly for folks either who are walking or biking or disabled or what have you, to get through Kansas City efficiently. And these are in places that have heavy pedestrian traffic, have heavy bicycle traffic, and other such issues. Briefly on the bicycle point, because I didn't get to make it, there was some discussion by some of us that suggested that, well, in different districts there are different issues and all those types of things. With that, I disagree. Perhaps why I'm running at large. Because the idea is just because you live in a poor part of town or a part of town where a lot of people drive a lot of places, doesn't mean that you don't need us to actually think about the importance of other ways of getting around, like bicycles, like others. I grew up on the east side of Kansas City and rode a bicycle to the public library all the time. There are actually already destinations in Kansas City that exist for people to go, no matter your part of town. And I think what we could do in terms of connectivity is having policy that supports and emphasizes those types of functions. Finally, then back to the road diet idea and other such programs, right? I think a way to ensure that we're actually making sure that public space is shared equitably is as the city is thinking about ways to build new boulevards, new areas, new trails, and others, right? We make sure that we remember the city that we want in the future. It's not just going to be a city that's saying, right, we're moving from one subdivision to another. It's one that says we're Kansas City and we're interesting because unlike perhaps Olathe or somewhere else, right, we're actually including bike trails or something as a fundamental part of our development plan. That's it.
Scott Wagner, 1st District at Large. The road diet for Grand, for example, will cost somewhere in the neighborhood of about $150,000 a mile. The only way to begin to get through this is actually as part of our road resurfacing plan to actually do the diets as we do that. And that I believe is the plan of the Public Works Department. Is probably the most efficient way you're going to be able to do it, unless you've got just a pot of money, which if you've been through our budget hearings, you know we don't have that. That was kind of a joke, but whatever. That's actually reality too. But at any rate, so the reality is as we do roads resurfacing, you're going to see more and more of these diets occur. But the other issue that I think we have to realize, and Quentin kind of hit on this, is the notion that the public space just isn't the street. It is the parks as well. And we have areas within this city where we have lots of parks right away that were purchased. In fact, in the Searcy Creek Parkway in the north of the river, we thought we were going to build a big a road through there. We're not in the near future, but we do have the ability to put a trail through there. And so the key, I think, for any council member in any part of the city that they represent is to look at that major street plan, to look and see when are we actually going to build something. And if they can't build a road in the near future, they can put a trail through there and begin to make those connections as we've talked about.
Ken?
I think it's important to note that throughout our region, Ken Backus, 5th District at large, we've done a halfway decent job of connecting through trails and the connectivity through some of the trailing system, even in Johnson County and Wyandotte County to certain extents. But I think within the 5th District, for example, the Paseo, I know south of Brush Creek, there's a bike lane, it's a designated bike lane. Most people just don't know it. And so I think we need to be very visual about the fact that there is a bike lane there, and that just like parts of Troost Avenue now at about 23rd, 24th, 25th Street, where there's a separation and the dieting of the lanes, I propose and support that for the whole of Prospect Avenue, as I've been talking to Councilman Reed about. We need to do it from at least 12th Street to 75th Street or so, or to Hickman Mills Drive, and that used to be 71 Highway, which is a 4-lane, 5 lanes in some places. It can easily diet down to 2 lanes, then have the outer lanes more of a dieting process to allow for other uses and for a real separate designation of a bike lane or walking lanes, et cetera. So I think, and then we need to actually fund it. That's the next thing we can do. We can be very proactive about funding these initiatives instead of just talking about them.
Okay. Jamaica Kendricks, 3rd District and District. I think I'm going to be the odd man out in this group. I just think differently. And so I've heard a lot about how we need to educate the public about the importance of biking and walking and all those different things. But I think elected officials are no different than lay people, only we have access to information that you don't once we're elected. And it's about the city. And so if we gave you that information, then you're able to make more informed decisions. But I think sometimes as elected officials or even experts who've read a lot, you feel like you know more than the people do, and you tell them what they need. I learned in Kansas City Public Schools, whenever the district came to parents and said, we're going to do this program for you because we think it's going to make it better for you, the parents were always like, how are you going to come and tell us what we need? Why didn't you ask us about it? And so I think as elected officials, we need to educate ourselves. So I think as a city council person, one of our major roles is to represent people. So we need to get out to you and talk to you to figure out what you want in your area. And then we need to work with the people who are paid as city staff to actually implement these things to make sure that your priorities are the priorities that are put into the projects that they create. And so I think instead of coming out and talking to the public about how you need biking and how you need to be able to walk, we need to talk to them and say, what is it that you need? How do we make this fit with what you want? We also need to be able to work with these neighborhoods and get that information out to the groups for whom this is important. Because BikeWalkKC, that group ought to be able to have this information about where it is. And this question was about equity, which is not equal, which means everybody gets the same, but those who need more get more and those who need less get less. The only way we figure out who needs more and who needs less is we actually talk to the people. And so I am suggesting that we get out in the neighborhoods, find out where these things are needed most, and begin to implement effectively and actually represent people rather than doing what we think is best.
Hi, Catherine Shields, 4th District at large. I think Ken probably hit on the issue, which is we have the plans, let's figure out how to pay for them. And I think that really goes back to a basic problem that we currently have in Kansas City, Missouri. We are not spending our infrastructure dollars wisely. And not only are we wasting money, but it affects the quality of our roads and buildings and bridges, etc. We need to implement a modern asset management program, and we will save millions of dollars, which we can then use to improve all our roads, including what we're doing in terms of trails, in bike lanes, etc. We will have those dollars out of existing dollars to do what we need to do. We applied this program in Jackson County. We went from 70% of the roads in poor to failed condition to over 70% of the roads in excellent condition, and we did it with the existing dollars. That's the kind of thing that needs to happen in Kansas City, but we don't have a champion on the council to see that happen. I want to be that champion. Thank you.
Jay Hodges, 2nd District at Large. I think the road diet is a great thing. I think that it's something that we're going to have to kind of slowly build and get people used to over time, because we live in a fast food society, and so therefore, since we implemented it on Thursday, by Saturday this should have been done and fixed, and that's just not reality. So we've got some road, but we've got 4 lanes all over everywhere. There's more than enough room to add bike lanes and do some other things. I don't think that that's a bad thing. I do want to take a very quick objection to something that was said earlier. I bike in the Northland, not nearly as much as I probably ought to, but given the campaign and my actual job, it's kind of tough to get out there and do. But at no point in time have I ever been struck by a car when I was biking from my house to Parkville, my house to Liberty, my house on Ambassador, just going out for a ride. I got a lot of riders in my neighborhood. I think it's a gross mischaracterization to say that your life is in jeopardy if you bike in the Northland. It's just not fair, and that's not correct, and it actually promotes more fear than it does anything else. But I do think that what we need to be doing right now in the Northland, south of the river, it doesn't really matter where you go, is realizing that these things are possible. They take time and they take collaborations. So if you're not seeing it move fast enough, the answer is not to throw a tantrum and run back to your table. The answer is to actually sit down and help us get more done faster. We're not going to do this on our own.
Would anybody else like to jump in? Please, Alicia. Now it's working.
All right, I get closing argument again.
Maybe, unless somebody else jumps in.
I know. Well,
Maybe the next to closing argument.
we've heard a lot of good comments on this issue about how do we do a better job at sharing this space. We heard, equity. We heard about asset management. All those things are really good. But what's really the key thing is who's going to be using them? What's the purpose of the thing? That's what you start with. And if there are young people that are going to be using these modes of transportation and deciding what we're going to be doing going forward, I think we need to be at the table. It's great to have plans, but if they're 20 years old, they're not relevant and are not as up to date. And we need to look at how do we modify them to make them more inclusive. And we start with input by engaging the people that we are expecting to use these modes of transportation. Now, I know some seniors that bike, but I don't think that that's who we're targeting when we're looking at these bike walk programs. And so it's important to make sure that we have those folks at the table and we make sure that what the plans that we're going to fund and actually execute are the ones that are going to be for going forward. And that's extremely important to make sure that we have the engagement from the young people, make sure that we have people that foresight at the table, and make sure that we have the commitment from the community as a whole to make sure that we fund them in an equitable way. Thank you.
Should Alicia have the last word on that question, or did anybody else want to jump in there? Let's move to our next one then. The August election for streetcar and max expansion showed significant voter support along Main Street. Do you support expanding the streetcar starter line to UMKC as a standalone project? And which streetcar and max projects would you support beyond that? Who would like to jump in first? Go ahead.
Here we go. I think Catherine Shields, 4th at Large. I think that when we see this downtown first phase completed, I think it's going to be incredibly successful, and I think we're going to see a lot of different areas pushing to have the streetcar expanded into them. Obviously, I think the next phase, if I understood the question, is from Crown Center on to UMKC. I think the voting record from the last election, even though it didn't pass overall, it shows that it was was supported in that area. It is my area. I'll be one of those people paying the extra property taxes to build it, but I think it is a worthwhile investment. I'd like to see this town get sufficiently excited about whether it's light rail or the streetcar, that we actually could have a successful citywide vote. And I think if this first phase and then the second phase are successful, I think we may actually come to a point where we see that. But we have to start out, politics is the art of the possible, and you have to start out with what you can accomplish. We accomplished the first phase through the particular sales tax and property tax increase. I think we're going to have to do the second phase in the same way. Then if those both prove to be as successful as I think, we may be able to look at other funding mechanisms.
So should we expand to UMKC?
Is
No,
that-
no, no, no. I'm sorry. That's my transition to Jermaine.
Should we expand the UMKC? But I will answer the part about Prospect Max because
Okay.
you all talked about
Absolutely.
ATA and Max. So there is a $40 to $57 million gap that we have to actually fund to make sure that we see Prospect Max become a reality. It's been mentioned earlier that Prospect Max, or Prospects, excuse me, is one of the highest traveled buses that we have in Kansas City. There are actually 6,000 people who ride Prospect every single day, which makes it the second highest traveled bus in the entire city. And so when we talk about Prospect Max, that is something that I am advocating for. I'm leading as the chairperson for Prospect Max to see that become a reality. I think that when we talk about getting people to jobs, getting people to opportunities, when we talk about improved infrastructure, if that's curves, sidewalks, or what have you, and that's also on the front end, that's getting people the jobs to actually put the curves and sidewalks in. That's also on the back end where people are having opportunity to get to their destination a lot quicker. If that's 10 minutes because of the Prospect Max bus rapid transit, making it go a lot faster, I think that's extremely important. We have had tons of meetings with the federal government. They are very interested in our plans. They very much know about what we've done along Truce. They know what we've done along Maine. And I think it's important that we do expand Prospect Max to make that become a reality within the next 2 years. As it relates to the extension of streetcar, I think we as Ms. Shields has already mentioned, there has to be some more information. I think the Urban Corps really spoke very loud as it relates to the vote that we had not too long ago. And so as it relates to moving it somewhere else, I don't necessarily know if I want to give an answer as to what's the best way to go just yet.
Thanks. Scott?
Scott Wagner, 1st District at Large. It was a very interesting vote last year because in the Main Street corridor, the vote was 65 to 67% for it, no matter where you went, no matter how many blocks you went to and from that route. Everywhere else, the vote was about 34%, 33%, in some cases 30%. It's very clear who wants it and who does not, and I believe the reason why is because, and just going back to one of my earlier answers, it's about destinations and connectivity. And it's pretty clear if you can go from the River Market all the way to UMKC and you've got numbers of destinations along the way, it makes a whole heck of a lot of sense to connect them up. And what we're seeing is not only moving people, but the development that comes with it. And I won't bore you with all the projects that have come as a result of just this first leg. But it's clear that those who are living along Main Street realize the value that's going there. And frankly, with the Transportation Development District mechanism, you don't have to wait for City Hall or the City Council to start moving that forward. Business owners along that line can do that. And I expect fully that somebody probably will, and I'm not going to tell them to do it. They're probably going to do it themselves. But when we talk about other modes, the reality is that we not only need a Prospect Max, we need a North Oak Max. North Oak in the Northland is by far the busiest line in the Northland. And in the Northland, we have the problem, I think, of the chicken or egg. You know, you can't have bus transit, you can't have multimodal transit because no one's going to use it. Well, nobody's using it because there's really only one line that gets a significant number of people. So you're going to have to do something. To me, North Oak is where we start, and that's what we should be doing in the next 4 years.
John? Oh, sorry, Jim, and Jim, then John.
Jim Glover. One of the problems with the extension debate is that we were trying to sell the invisible, in a sense. We were telling people that development would occur as a result of the streetcar when we've only had the downtown streetcar approved. And we're seeing development, and I think when it's built, well, it'll be a much more popular thing. And we find that out around the country is that once transit is built, it's much more popular. People can kick the tires, they see how it works, and they can see the development it works. As someone who lives in the Main Street corridor, I would like to see that happen, especially for downtown's benefit, because when you connect UMKC with the crossroads in downtown, that facilitates 1,000 students coming in the Performing Arts Center. But I want to lay a bit of caution. Before we throw out Linwood and Independence, we have to realize that the streetcar for the development of Linwood is very critical. The development of the shopping center between Main Street and Gillum has not really gone to the edge, and that's mainly because it's too short. We need a streetcar to facilitate that type of development. In the Northeast, the Northeast was built on a streetcar line, and revitalizing Independence Avenue is critically important to this city, and a streetcar would help. The reason we have to be cautious in going forward just separately is because the financing issues are linked. I'm looking at Doug Stone there, and they are linked. And I think we have to be careful in measuring that, not give up Linwood or Independence Avenue, and have a plan for that at the future. Maybe do it in a stage, but approach, but I'm concerned about giving it up. I will go over this a little bit. I think varying the mix between sales tax and property tax needs to be examined. It was a property tax that was not popular, and I think we have to look at that.
John?
John Fierro, candidate for 4th District. I support the streetcar expansion, and this last go-around, I supported specifically the expansion along Independence Avenue. I think the investment that comes along with streetcar is what that particular neighborhood needs, along with other areas. But I also agree with some of the comments that have been made. We have to look at some other funding alternatives. There are some areas that will take the current strategy to support it, and there's other areas that don't want to do it that way. I think in terms of the Prospect Max, that would be an option that I'd like to look at in terms of along Independence Avenue, because they have one of the highest ridership areas as well. Long term for me, I want to connect the entire city. In my mind, we should be able to have people go out to the Northland, go out to the airport within 10 minutes, go out to South Kansas City, East Kansas City, and West Side. That's what I want to see as a vision for Kansas City, where people can really explore our city and to understand what is truly special, and that is the small businesses, that is the restaurants, that is the entertainment district. So I definitely support getting us to that place. Thank you.
Terrence Nash. I was involved with the light rail election last year. I opposed the light rail expansion. I'm very in favor of the Max bus line, and I believe they should be expanded. Former Councilman Bob Llewellyn, he always told me that Kansas City builds out, not up. And one of the most important things for streetcars or light rail is density of the population. And that is not what Kansas City has. We always talk about 319 square miles. We're too spread out for a comprehensive light rail system. I was at the Regional Equity Transportation meeting, and Mid-America Regional Council is now studying bus lines to go from Johnson County to Cerner. Well, why aren't we going to have a Max bus line on 95th Street where they could go Cerner, Burns and McDonald, and other places in Johnson County, or on 75th Street? We have unemployment on the east side. We have jobs in Johnson County. That's what we've got to get, how we need to focus on is about jobs for people that need them, and so we can attack the problem of crime and other issues.
Face off.
All the people go first.
Dick Davis, 1st District, and the older gentleman, thank you. I spent my career trying to build light rail and at ATA, and it's been such a great achievement to be able to finally see it being developed. I had the chance a few years ago to spend a couple of weeks in Moscow, which probably is the greatest rail system I've ever seen, one of the greatest in the world. But they said, when did you start this? And they said, well, we started in the Depression years in the Stalin area. When's it going to be finished? And they said, never. I think that's the philosophy we should be talking about with the streetcar. What we're really trying to do is find a way to make this community less automotive dependent, try to find a way to give better transit options. So the streetcar is just phase one. What we've got to do, and we had a real debate within City Council this year as to whether to propose this line to UMKC now or wait till the streetcar open. We decided it was better to wait when we had an opportunity to show people just how great it could be. So I think you'll see that proposal on the ballot during the next term. I think, though, that we should look upon it as just step two. The name of the game is how do we continue building this for the next 100 years. Thank you.
It's meant to say that women and older people go first, or my elders, so not, I didn't mean to. But at any rate, Ken Backus in the 5th District, and Pot talking about the kettle, so to speak. But I think our real issues can be solved with buses. I'm a big proponent of the bus system, and I think we have unmet needs in our city, and we have unmet needs in our region that buses can handle right now. Even a bus is more expensive to use than your automobile. It's just more expensive. Unfortunately, there are many people without adequate transportation, so that's why public transportation is so important. And so I advocate for the MAX line and any other line that would get people from point A to point B and all the points in between is the most efficient way to move the public around. Now, to the extent that we have streetcar, I think once it's developed and once it's in place, people are going to be more excited about it. And maybe it happened going down to UMKC to the plaza may be the best way. But the reason the transfer line started because the business community in this city didn't want the starter line from downtown to the plaza. That's how it started. We were appointed to deal with the fact that Mayor Cleaver was encouraged by a lot of business people to call this a touristy frou-frou process in 1997. So we here in 2015, 18 years later, still trying to figure out how to do this. So clearly, if we're going to finance a starter line to the plaza or to Independence Avenue along Linwood Boulevard, it needs to be a citywide, city-owned agenda, not just a certain designated district. We need to quit dividing our city. We need to make these decisions as one Kansas City.
Okay, Jamaica Kendricks, 3rd District and District again. So in answering the question of whether I think it should expand to UMKC or not, I will always support whatever the residents in the 3rd District support because that's my job on City Council is to represent them. But if it's moving to UMKC and folks in the 3rd District are not required to actually finance that, then I think the people who are required to finance it are the ones who need to have a say in whether or not it expands or not. But I want to move back and think about why it is that the streetcar expansion failed. And I personally feel like it was a failure on the city's part to get information out to people about the benefits and the cost of this. It was also a failure to talk to people about potential options for being able to fund this and things that might work with some areas or might not work in others, and to be able to create a plan or a proposal that actually took into consideration what the different groups were saying was feasible. And so somebody up here said, you know, it's really the property tax that failed. And truly in the 3rd District, most people were like, I can't afford to have my property taxes increased. I don't need this. But I also think in looking at Prospect Max and whatnot, we're looking at what we think is best. I used to ride the bus faithfully for about 15 years. Prospect and Truce run every 10 minutes. Those are the fastest buses you can get on. You miss one, one's coming in 10 minutes. 47th Street bus, that runs every 45 minutes, and there are several buses like that. So we're focused on Prospect Max, but when you're a person who rides the bus, Prospect is already pretty convenient and fast. It's other routes that are a lot more difficult. So again, talking to people and figuring out what it is that they need allows us to spend our resources better and actually address needs. And I'm going to keep harping on that because I'm hoping that as we move forward, our council will do the same.
Jay?
Yes. Hell yes, yes, yes. I'm done.
Would anybody like to add anything onto Jay's yes? Any no's? Any additional comments? Is there anything anyone would like to say about something you heard in a conversation about streetcar and Max? Go right ahead, please.
Yeah, I just want to kind of talk about, I was at a forum directly after the vote last August, and there was a city council person that said that the vote on the east side was a no vote because people didn't understand what they were voting for. And I took some offense to that because I think people on the east side know what they're voting for. They were voting for a tax that they didn't necessarily see that they needed. And if the city, those of us who are looking to be council folks, if we want to get information to the people to let them know exactly how they can benefit from whatever the issue is, we must do that. We must get the information out to them. We can't necessarily talk and say things that the citizens are not informed, because if they are, they're informed about what they know that is out there. So I took offense to the fact that someone says that the people on the east side didn't vote for the streetcar because they didn't know what they were voting for. They knew exactly what they were voting for, and they knew exactly what they were voting against.
Thank you. No? Anybody else want to? Let's move on to our final question, and maybe we'll even have some time for yours afterwards. Acquiring the underutilized Rock Island right-of-way would allow an urban connection to the statewide Katy Trail and could become a key component of a regional rail system. Jackson County has proposed purchasing the corridor with money from every municipality. Do you support Kansas City funding to acquire the Rock Island right-of-way for future trail and transit use?
Catherine Shields, 4th District at Large. I think that the only way we're going to get an interconnected between our state and between our different cities is if we come together and bite the bullet and just do it. And I want to applaud Mr. Sanders, our county executive, for starting this work through Jackson County. I think it's very commendable. And I think as cities, I think Kansas City should be a leader, and I think we should step up and say, yes, we don't know yet what all the components are, but yes, we want to be a part of a heavy rail transit system from the suburbs into Kansas City. I heard the former mayor of Denver and the current governor of Colorado talk recently, and he said when he got elected, the first thing he invited in all the regional players, cities and all around Denver, and he said to them, Denver can't be successful unless our suburbs are successful. And I think that as a city, we need to be a model to say we're all in this together, whether we're Kansas City or Olathe, and we want to be a part of finding a solution to create heavy rail.
Thanks, Teresa.
I think this option is the only option for the Kansas City regional area. This is a true get people to work, get people where they need to go, get people back and forth. Because our region is so geographically large, this makes sense. I think Kansas City should take the lead on this, along with Jackson County, get those rails going. I mean, they're already there, so all we have to do is connect them. And that begins to move people, as in mass and public transit, into the city and back out of it, to jobs where they need to get to. So if you do have someone east of Truce that needs a job and there's one in Olathe, they've got a way to get there and back, or to Blue Springs. You know, it just makes sense to me. And I've had several conversations with Mike Sanders, and I think if anything makes sense, this is the one.
Thanks. Quentin.
I agree wholeheartedly. The first thing I want to note is to commend Lee Barnes for that comment. And then one thing that kind of became evident during the last discussion and transportation, which has been fascinating. We spend a lot of time talking east and west, or white, black, or however you really see it. And I don't think that's necessarily the conversation we really want for our city, because these are solutions, whether it's biking, whether it's transit, whether it's fixed rail, or anything else, that we all need to be part of. If we have a whole part of the city that feels excluded, I'll tell you what, we're going to continue to have the same problems that we have in Kansas City now and we've had for as long as we've all been alive. As to the solution that we've talked about now, I agree with Teresa, I agree with Catherine, and the idea that this is an important solution. This is the exact type of thing that we should find city funding for, a true regional solution for transit. Not saying there's anything wrong with local solutions, including TDD solutions for transit, but in this type of situation where we're helping to support our suburbs, we're helping to support a broader community, and we're helping to get that connectivity that we're talking about that already exists, right? I think this is vital and important, and it's the type of thing that can help move this area forward. What's more, I don't think we should just end with our Missouri State solution. We've mentioned Kansas a few times. We need to make sure that we're living in the reality that everybody in the Kansas City area lives, which is that there are jobs, there are homes, there are others that live on both sides of the state line, across rivers, and basically everywhere. How can we connect that and make it better?
Ken?
Last September, I was a member of the Jackson County Legislature when Mike Sanders, over the couple months previous to that, started talking to the legislature about how to, whether we should just go after dollars through the Mid-America Regional Council and make a down payment on the line and on the right-of-way. And then in September, the members of the Jackson County Legislature actually approved the first $10 million as down payment. However, the problem is that $59 million more are needed to make it work. So I believe that absolutely Kansas City should be part of this discussion, because we are among the larger players in our region, and particularly on the Missouri side, we are the largest player actually for the whole region, but particularly on the Missouri side. And the reason we want to bring all the other communities in play is because the right-of-way for the Rock Island, whatever the railroad it is, I think it's Rock Island, is that most of that land was given to the railroads over 100 years ago, 150 years ago. The land was basically given to them. So to charge $59 million a day is ridiculous. But however, I understand the value of land, and there ought to be ways to pay some money and have the remaining part of it just given, or a long-term lease for 200 years or something like that, so that we can advance this issue forward and create more connectivity for our region and to our state and interstate as well. So I absolutely support it, and we need to find solutions to make it happen. We are still one Kansas City.
I will piggyback off of what Mr. Bacchus says about the importance of representing ourselves as one Kansas City. When you look at Kansas City and the issues that we're faced with, they're not just Kansas City issues, they're regional issues, whether it's transportation or crime. And we have a really good example of what that looks like when you have a collaborative approach to address an issue. And working in the Jackson County Prosecutor's Office, we was part of when we were assembling the collaborative to address crime with Kansas City Nova. And so it brought in all the stakeholders, the major stakeholders that had a hand either directly or indirectly dealing with crime, and brought them around the table and said, how are we going to address this? Well, it was a huge problem, and to address it effectively is going to take a lot of money. Well, because of the unique partnership involved, we were well positioned to be able to get the funding with the Byrne grant from the Department of Justice. And so when you have all the major stakeholders at the table, $57 million, it becomes more manageable to be able to come up with. And so when we look at what that looks like in terms of where we stand today, that means that we're taking a holistic approach at dealing with what the transportation is going to look like for the next 50 years. Right now, we're looking at, okay, well, how are we going to connect from A to B? And if we're going to get there are people in my district that want trail in South Kansas City to Cerner. But does that solve the bigger issue of connectivity and getting people to work? And when we know in the 5th district, we have a really high unemployment rate and not a lot of businesses in our district, and most of our residents are traveling to Johnson County, north of the river, or like me, to eastern Jackson County. And another thing I like to make a comment about is when we say east of Truce, I have constituents in the 5th district that say Lee Summit Road is east of Truce. So we need to really change the dialogue when we talk about what east of Truce really looks like. And we need to talk about how do we make it equitable and make sure that we are coming up with inclusive solutions to address the problems that we have in Kansas City.
Scott Wagner, 1st District at Large, and I'm going to be somewhat of a contrarian because this is a perfect opportunity to showcase that you can't have everything. You cannot have everything. In this particular case, this project came through the Total Transportation Committee at MARC, of which I sit on, along with Councilman Davis and others. When that first came through, it was not only going to, the idea was not only to buy that Rock Island right-of-way, but it meant that a number of other projects were going to have to be thrown out, including shovel-ready projects in Clay and Platte counties. I had a fit over that because the fact is that right now, Union Pacific and Kansas City Southern can't figure out where you're going to terminate that commuter rail line, which means that you're going to have right-of-way, and you still got a lot of things to fix. Meanwhile, shovel-ready projects are sitting, waiting for funding. I don't necessarily believe in that. I understand the importance of this line, and I understand the importance of commuter rail, but at the end of the day, there's decisions on how long are you prepared to wait, and are you prepared to tell your constituents that, yeah, you're ready to go, you've got the drawings, you've got the right-of-way, you've got everything, but you've got to wait. That's the part of government that's not fun. The willingness to tell somebody that even though something isn't ready to go, your ready project can't go. So sometimes you have to say no, sometimes you have to say yes, but, and in this case there was a lot of yes, but, so there was money set aside, and we're hopeful that all these things are going to be figured out for Rock Island and the rest of commuter rail. But meanwhile, constituents all over this region have to figure out when their projects get to go. One other final comment, though, since this will be the last question. The whole reason why Jackson County and the city of Kansas City and TDDs have to develop is because the KCATA, the regional authority, hasn't been ready to come forward. Joe Reardon is now their new director. I'm hopeful that they'll take on what all of us have had to take on. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to talk about the Rock Island right-of-way? Well, you all have been very patient this evening, and I'm guessing some of you are chomping at the bit to either get out of here or ask your own questions. So I'm going to give you an option to do the latter, which is ask your own questions. By a show of hands, if you have a question, stick up your hand, and I'm going to bring the microphone to you. We're going to grab a microphone right here. We're going to walk it up to you, and you're going to ask your question. We have about 10 minutes to do so. And if you would do me a favor, just stand up, tell us your name, and go ahead with your question.
Hi, my name is Chris Faisal. I'd like to introduce myself as an autonomous vehicle advocate. And so my question is, how do you feel about picking, if you had to choose an incentive between funding Google to come to Kansas City, with which we already have a relationship with, over funding some more of these traditional alternative transportation measures that we're going on with right now? Being as how with Google is searching for a pilot city right now to test out its autonomous, driverless cars. There's a large payoff, but it's far in the future. I think it has a huge entrepreneurial edge. Our cars sit parked 95% of the time. They're dangerous. And if autonomous vehicles could show even a 20 to 30% reduction in costs, it's also an equitable issue, for people that just don't have access to cars. Which would you choose?
So what do you think about autonomous vehicles, self-driving cars? Please.
I think it's a great idea. With a lot of our residents in Kansas City, and really just statewide, honestly, when we travel to Jefferson City, when we're lobbying, when we're going to create more connectivity between Kansas City and St. Louis, using I-70 as a thoroughfare to use that technology would enhance our roadways, make them safer, and make it more enjoyable for people to interact across the state and not have to, we have the University in Columbia, we have people going to Jeff City, which is our state capital, and then St. Louis is another major city. I think if we use that as a prototype, I think that will be a very good opportunity for us to be at the top of another list as far as being on the cutting edge of technology.
Anybody else want to talk about AVs?
Of Google coming to town with autonomous cars. I spoke with a young man, probably 3 months ago, talking about smart pavement, where all the technology was in the pavement. So it would accommodate the driverless cars with the navigational equipment built right into the pavement. And at first I thought he was talking science fiction, but in fact, it's not far off at all. So I would definitely would entertain that.
Go ahead.
Is it on? Okay.
Many years ago, I helped my son do a some research on magnetic levitation, and I think that was more related to trains than cars. However, with all the new technology and the way things are going now, you would think that some of those technologies still may be applicable in some way. I think the infrastructure part would be insanely expensive and making all of it work, and it scared me to death to drive from my house to downtown with the people I drive with from downtown to my house every day on something that drives by itself. But looking futuristically, I think we have to imagine ourselves there. And with that regard, I think we always have to make the possible out of the impossible and look for ways to go forward.
Allow me to toss in my own question about this, which is autonomous vehicles are predicted to be a great service for kind of almost a replacement for paratransit and perhaps even some bus lines. What do you think about autonomous vehicle technology if it essentially would take public transit jobs away? Jamika?
Okay, on this issue, like on every other issue, I don't think it's an issue that 12 people on city council should decide on their own. I don't think it's an issue that they should decide with the folks who are kind of pushing these things. I think it's something that needs to go back to the residents. And as we talk about 1KC, I don't feel like there is 1KC. We can claim it, but there isn't, because it's not just Midtown, even the Northland, everybody kind of feels like they're left out. So I think if it takes away jobs, or has the potential to, or it has the potential to bring some technology that we didn't think would be possible, I think before we make a decision about it as 12 people who are elected as representatives, we need to figure out a way to effectively engage people and ask them what's most important to you and how do we use this to actually align with your priority.
One of the things that has happened for decades, and I mean going back to the 70s, is that people have tried to put the issue in the either or. Either you like an automobile system or you like transit. And although this is new technology, sounds equivalent to the personal rapid transit system, that technology that was developed in the 70s and never implemented. We can't allow it to be an either-or issue, street or cars or transit. You can have both, and I used to tell in the 70s when I went out in Denver talking about transit, I would tell people that even if they never rode on a transit system, and they always drove a car, that they would benefit from the transit system, not only economically and environmentally, but the streets would be less congested. The other thing I want to emphasize about a streetcar system and fixed rail is that with the automobile or even a bus service, you do not have the development impact of putting those rails in the ground. When you put those rails in the ground, people know, investors know, they're not going to move. And they'll invest along the rails in development. We've seen that happening downtown, and we're going to see it a lot more. With cars, you lose that. So I'm a big proponent of rail, and I've spent a long time trying to make it not an either-or, because the automobile, people riding automobiles, driving automobiles will kill transit if you make it that. You have to be able to make an argument also for transit and look at the developmental impacts of a fixed rail system.
Let's move on to our next. I want to get a chance to ask some more questions instead of, I do love the topic of autonomous vehicles, by the way, but.
Hi, my name is Sydney Milstein, and I have kind of a question, maybe an observation about biking, and a lot of you have talked about connectivity and destination, and I think it was Jermaine that brought up the idea of utilizing the Paseo as part of a biking system. Well, it's not just the Paseo. We have a world-class parks and boulevard system in Kansas City that can and has made Kansas City one. And, you know, I've been sitting here writing a list of the boulevards that makes our city one, and it's Independence, the Paseo, Benton, Linwood, Armour, Broadway, Gladstone, Ward Parkway, Meyer, Swope, Van Brunt, and Brookside. These are all within the system that was designed by the great George Kessler. So I don't know if it's more of a question or a comment, but it's already in place. And working with the park department, you know, and utilizing this system, putting pathways in, putting bike paths in, we could ride all over the city from north to south to east to west, and there wouldn't be any adverse effect on the system.
Any other questions?
So if I could respond,
Sure, please
and
go
I'll
ahead.
probably let this be my perhaps last sort of statement, and I really appreciate what you said because I've been following the conversation along with many of you on Twitter as we've been sitting here from the stage. And, you know, for me, this is the reason why I ran for city council. Is because, and that was 4 years ago, and the reason why I'm running again for another 4 years is because I realize that if you're not at the table, you perhaps might be on the menu. And these are some complex issues that we have to deal with. And the reality of it is that I want to be a supporter and moving the conversation along. And I realize at the end of the day, I'd rather be able to stand here maybe 50 years later and tell my kids and tell my grandkids, right, 50 years from now, that I was leading and I wasn't been a lagger on issues of importance, just like the ones that we've talked about. Cities across this country have already answered a lot of these issues that we are discussing. And it makes us sometimes look like, oh, why is Kansas City behind on some of the big issues, especially as it relates to transportation? And it's important for us to be able to come up with solutions. And as I stand here and I look at Doug Stone, I look at Travis Levitt, and people who have been out there on the front lines with persons from our community helping sell these issues that are tough for us to understand, it's important that we find solutions to get to the end result.
I'm John Fierro, candidate for City Council 4th District, and as one of the former Park Board presidents, I appreciate your comments. I mean, I think it just speaks to Kansas City. There's so many assets. We don't always have to reinvent the wheel, and George Kessler was successful. It was about building a city within a park system, so we have that. So for me, I do support more funding to put more bike lanes in place, but also have resting places along the way. I mean, so as people ride, they want to be able to stop, go to the bathroom, they want to be able to drink water, et cetera. So I very much support that, and I think that speaks to the connectability. So I certainly advocate for that and appreciate your comment.
Another question, please. What's your
My
name?
name's Chris Steinauer. And so we've been talking about how there are a lot of really cool ideas, and even autonomous cars were brought up, but that money is also an issue. So what low-cost creative solutions have current city council members considered, or what would hopeful city council members consider? Bike share programs, community transit programs, et cetera.
Please.
Well, I think there are a lot of programs that we can implement, but when we're really looking at the money to do a myriad of things, including what we've talked about today, I think we have to first go back to the money we have, and I think we need to recognize the fact that we are not spending it wisely. And this next council needs to implement a modern program of asset management so that we're spending $1 maintaining our infrastructure, roads, bridges, buildings, whatever, instead of $10 repairing or replacing it. And if we implement a program like that, we will not only improve the quality of our infrastructure, but we will save a whole heck of a lot of money that then can be used in a myriad of ways, including some of those that have been discussed today. You know, they say, I think it was Galen that said, first do no harm. I think a corollary to that is when you're spending your money, first make sure you're spending it the right way, particularly if you tend to go out and ask people for more. So first in Kansas City, we need someone on the council that is an advocate for asset management. We need to spend the dollars we have wisely. We will have additional dollars within that current pool to use in a myriad of ways.
Please do.
On the topic of fiscal responsibility, that's a very important question to be asked of this council. You know, we just recently saw at the most recent budget hearings, it's particularly at the 5th District hearing at the Southeast Community Center, people were extremely upset because this current council presented to the voters and said we needed money for the safety net providers. And then when the budget was done, they said, oh, well, we need to spend it for something else. Well, my constituents were very concerned about that because that was not what was presented to the voters. And so when you pull this bait and switch, for whatever the reason is, I wasn't part of the further discussions, but it further breeds distrust. And so when you do have to go back and ask the voters for more money time and time again, it's extremely important that you have people with credibility that sit at the table that have a history and demonstrated financial responsibility when it comes to public dollars. And so that's the first and foremost thing when you're looking at who you're going to vote for this cycle. The next thing is making sure that there's a clear plan and it's in the writing of what the money is going to be spent for. And that limits the ability for the money to be redirected potentially. Because when you have this kind of catch-all and this vague language, you run the risk of that. And so even when we look at being better stewards of the money that we do have, we have to make sure that the money that we're allocating goes to what we're allocating it for. And that goes to just really being a person of your word. And that's going to be extremely important. I know some of the concerns of the people in my district are, you know, some of those same things. There was an issue with the soccer field. There was a TIF that was funded for sewers and curbs. Well, when the TIF matured, they decided to do something else, and now we have a great soccer field. But the people who paid into that TIF wanted sewers and sidewalks. And so things like that has happened over time that have eroded at the trust of the public officials. And so I think that all of us that are standing here wanting to be representatives today have to keep that in mind, and we ask that you all keep us accountable in that way as well. And hold people's feet to the fire. What's the language in the ballot initiative that's coming before you? Because if that's not really clearly spelled out, you run the risk. And so those are some things I really would like to put back on the table as far as, you know, being accountable on your end as well.
Your mic. We've taken all the mics away. This is a strategic thing.
So you asked about low-cost ways to deal with transportation, right? Okay. So I see my job as not creating projects, but partnerships. So in my mind, I would like to connect the schools much more with the city. And I think by creating a partnership between schools and the city and even unions in the school and the city, then you create opportunities where we can go for state and federal dollars where we're not necessarily spending out of the city budget. You also make it where these costs can be shared among the different groups. So I actually envision us being able to create a project like in the 3rd District where I've talked to hundreds of voters, and a lot of what I've heard in certain areas is we really need sidewalks. We can't walk our neighborhoods because our sidewalks are all broken up. In some senior center areas, there's like 4-inch dips in sidewalks, and it's not handicap accessible, and so they wanted to fix that. Well, we could create jobs, we could increase education, increase graduation rates, as well as increase walkability and bikeability in neighborhoods if we created a partnership between some of those tradesmen and get a master tradesman to work with the school district to create a curriculum that allows these students to actually get hands-on learning by being able to help to fix some of these sidewalks or put in sidewalks. And then that also gives those people jobs after they graduate. If we did that in adult education, then some of the adults who we have who are unemployed, and actually in the 3rd District, we have 60% of our folks who are 25 and older have less than or have had no college. And so that's 60% who only have a high school degree. So being able to get connected to trades and get a job that gives them a living wage is really, really important. And creating partnerships instead of doing projects actually allows you the ability to have this thing be sustainable even after you're off council or after that one project is done.
I think we're going to leave it there. Allow me to end with a tweet that came in a couple of hours ago from Katie, who said, "Yay for people who care about Kansas City, transportation, and voting." I couldn't agree more. I would invite our candidates to stay afterwards outside in the lobby. If anybody else has any questions you'd like to ask them, please join me in a round of applause for all of our candidates this evening. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Just a couple quick things. A round of